Digital accessibility can be really expensive depending on who you go through. A few hours ago, I received the email on the screen with me. So let's read through this and look at the quote that this former client is getting now. Kris, long time since we spoke and hope all is well. Yes, it's been years since I've heard from this client. Since we last spoke, we've made significant progress on our legacy site and have redesigned the code, getting ready to launch a new version meeting additional ADA WCAG 2.2 standards. With that being said, what would it look like for you to quote out an automated scan and human verification, go through my site and write up an ACR report? And then he continues, and this is the last sentence or the last line. I'm getting some quotes from others who've been doing work for us since we last spoke. Typically, they are around $20,000 annually for two audits, one automated, one human testing, an ACR report, and 10 hours of consulting support. Just looking for options that help me keep budget in mind. All right, so as I read through this at the last part, I instantly think that he's gone with one of the big accessibility companies where their floor for a client might be $20,000. And that's completely unnecessary. You do not have to pay that much for, especially for what he's getting in return. So he even said, he said two audits, one automated, one human testing. Well, the automated quote unquote audit isn't an audit. It's a scan. You don't need to pay this company thousands of dollars to scan your website. And then for human testing, so we want that audit report. ACR, I don't know exactly why the ACR is in play because this website's an e-commerce website. I'm curious if there's if the website itself is a product or service. But sometimes people within the digital accessibility companies, they don't understand or they just don't care and they're willing to sell you something. But the ACR report might be the value add here. And so that's why they're creating it. But BPATs really aren't for websites unless the website is a product or service itself or is a part of the product or service. And then the 10 hours of consulting as well. So I think one key right here is he has two audits and one is really a throwaway. A scan is not an audit. So he's really getting one audit, an ACR, and 10 hours of consulting support. And I wrote him back and I said that we can conduct two audits for him, and they would both be actual audits. So no scan. The scan would be, in effect, he'd have the scan included because we use a scan as a review anyway. No need for an ACR report unless there's just something I don't know about his particular website. And then 10 hours of consulting, yeah, we can provide that. And we can provide that at all, like a 60% less than he's been quoted. And there's no need for a subscription with us. So, some of these accessibility companies, they have a price floor in mind, and they're going to try to create a value sandwich where they add in things that you don't need that really don't provide any value, but they'll add them in there to make it seem like they do. For this client, an automated scan, that's something that to pay thousands of dollars for something that you could scan, say 15 pages of your website in a matter of, I don't know, let's say 20 minutes if you want to go ahead and copy and paste the scan results. It's just completely unnecessary, but they're presenting it as an automated audit, which is inflating, like really exaggerating what exactly it is. But the line items here sound exactly like something from a bigger accessibility company. One thing to keep in mind that when you're comparing different companies and different agencies is that just because you're paying less doesn't mean the quality goes down. When you look at the companies that only want to deal with enterprise clients and they have a project floor where they won't even accept you. And here it sounds like he's getting quotes from the bigger companies because he's saying that typically they are around $20,000. So you're paying well above market rate. And even if, like, let's just say he's getting two audits, then the market rate, and I have his website in mind. His website there are several pages involved, but it's nothing to where it's an overly complex website. It's just it's fairly standard for e-commerce. But let's say there were 15 pages involved, completely not necessary to pay this much. And you could, if it was $10,000 for 2 audits and 10 hours of consulting, that would be more in line with a reasonable quote. But here it's just an artificially high floor just to work with one of these bigger companies. And so that's why the quotes are coming back so high. So, when he's asking me for a quote for an automated scan, I'm going to tell him, like, look, like, we don't, first of all, like, we don't have a scan. Scans are ubiquitous, and I don't want accessible.org to have one. It's been suggested to me that I could add it and sell, but you could just walk down the street and you can go and use WaveScan, or you can use AxScan, or Google Lighthouse, or any other scan you wanted. So they're just ubiquitous and they don't add a lot of value, and I don't really recommend them anyway because they're incomplete. If someone wants a scan and there's a particular reason they want to scan, like, yes, we can scan your website and we can give you the results of the scan. But again, that's not something I would charge thousands of dollars for. And I would also ask the client, why do you think you need this? What is it that you're hoping to get from this? But not necessary. What you're after are the audits, because then you have complete and accurate data. So human verification, definitely an audit, full audit, and then user testing. So that's one way here. That's one thing. This is a service I'll suggest to this client is like, hey, look, along with the audit, why don't we get user testing in here? And then we can replace the ACR with the user testing, because you don't need the ACR. And we can provide documentation. We can provide documentation of the accessibility. If your website's fully conformant, then we can provide a conformance statement or certification. But this is a really high quote. But this is what happens when you go to the accessibility companies who only want to deal with enterprise clients. You are going to pay a minimum to even get in the door. And then so what comes with that is a bucket, and then you have the value sandwich presented to you, and where you're not able to extract all that much value. So the ACR being unnecessary, it's hard to it's hard to know how much they assign to that. But the 10 hours of consulting, accessible.org charges $195 per hour. So even at that, I looked at the website for a WCAG 2.1 AA audit, including desktop and mobile environments. He's looking at I haven't fully scoped it, but just looking through it, browsing through it, I would say $3,500 on the high end. Like, if that's being very conservative, there's a good chance it will fall under that. So even with 2 actual audits, right? 2 audits fully manually conducted, right? You're looking at less than $10,000 for this project. So right now he's paying a premium. And even if you go to some of these companies who only are looking for enterprise clients, it doesn't mean that you're going to get high quality services back. In fact, your audit report may be missing issues, because what can happen is some of these companies are looking, they're processing audits so fast that the audit quality suffers. And so it doesn't even mean that you're getting good quality back. So really, it's really, really important to know this, because there are so many big companies that are prevalent. And I haven't checked, I'm not in the sales demos now, but this was a really interesting email. And it was good to see that he wrote me back, because it's been years since I've talked to this person. Like, I think it may have been 2021. I could check, but it's been a long, long time. As he writes, long time since we last spoke. So yeah, when you're getting quotes for accessibility audits and other accessibility services, you can expect to pay a few $1,000s, it's going to vary based on the complexity. But if you're getting back $10,000 to $20,000, and let's say there are less than 20 pages or screens in scope, then that's a good time to start looking for quotes from other providers, other agencies. You're looking for reputability. I posted a video on other digital accessibility companies besides accessible.org that actually offer real audits and user testing. And the key was that they didn't try to sell you any overlay widgets, and they weren't pushing clients to purchase a scan. So scans are very profitable, but as I said, they're ubiquitous, they're everywhere. You just don't need to, it's not something that you really need to pay for unless you just know that specific reason why you want it. Scans are typically for practitioners. They're not for most clients. And so yeah, the quotes here, and he stated that he's received multiple quotes coming in at $20,000. And I know this project. I went and revisited the website, and yet the website looks much better. There will be there will be probably 15 to 20 pages in scope, but it's just not that high. And so if you want to get an estimate on your project, and you're looking at audit and VPAT services, potentially user testing as well, I'll include a link to the accessible.org cost calculator. In fact, we can go to that right now. So I will go ahead and go to accessible.org cost calculator. And here you can start to get an estimate on your project. And there's a video on how to go through the cost calculator, but here you can add in simple pages, light pages, complex pages. So we could just start ticking on some of these. Let's say we have 2 complex, 3 complex pages, 4 or 5 simple pages. One important note is that pages vary in complexity and difficulty, and some are easier to get through than others. So we don't charge the same amount per page. That's why there's a range. But I've gone ahead and I've said 5 simple pages, 1 light pages, 3 complex, 2 medium. Let's go ahead and add mobile audit to this. He mentioned WCAG 2.2, so we'll upgrade to 2.2 standard. We'll throw in a WCAG edition of the VPAT just for illustrative purposes. Let's go ahead and add in 1 session of user testing, and then we've got 10 hours of technical support. And let's calculate what would this be. So the estimate here is $6,020. And so I've added quite a lot. So let's go ahead and really pile on this audit. Let's go ahead and make it 7 medium pages. We'll make it 5 complex, 2 light pages. We'll keep the number of simple pages. And then we'll keep everything else the same. 10 hours of technical support. And then now we're looking at $8,085. So again, it's the quote shouldn't be, when you're dealing with a company that has a minimum floor, you're just going to end up paying more than you should. And so with accessible.org, you're going to get an excellent high quality audit. There is nothing in terms of quality that is lost, and there's no annual subscription. So there's no annual fees. We can have, if it's more convenient, you can certainly be on a subscription if you want to, but you don't have to be. No sales demo. I mean, the demo is all the information on accessible.org. And you can also watch the YouTube channel to learn more about the different, just how the services come about. I've written about this many times on what client processes and what clients can expect. But yeah, just going through here, if we look at the Price is Right Showcase Showdown, we've got 10 hours of technical support, 1 user testing session. We've got VPAT services for the WCAG edition of the VPAT. We have supersized our audit to include mobile environment and using the WCAG 2.2 AA standard. And we have 19 pages in scope, and 5 of those are complex and 7 are medium. And then the estimate here again is $8,085, and we've got all of these line items. So this is a nice conservative estimate, and your end quote may even come up lower, but this is more of you're going to get a more reasonable quote depending on which provider you choose. So if you go with the providers that have a minimum floor to even have an accessibility project with them, you can expect to pay that type of market. So In this case, you're looking at a 100% markup on the prices, actually more than 100%. But yeah, because it wasn't he wasn't getting two audits. I just remember that. I keep thinking of two audits, and I was like, okay, well, there's still going to be more for a second audit, but even in this case, I don't think his website is this complex. Again, I looked at it. This is all just for illustrative purposes. Going through and adding these pages, I just don't think the pages are going to add up to be that high. So this is the state of accessibility, though. This is what happens when you get quotes from certain providers. I've just tabbed now to the email, $20,000 annually. And annually, keep that in mind, that subscription is a difference. So if you want to get out of the subscription, then you're going to have to try to get out of that subscription, right? It's not always as easy as saying, I just want to cancel. But definitely not necessary. The scan is very, very low value. And so here what you have is 10 hours of consulting, an ACR, and an audit for $20,000. That is extremely high. I will include a link to accessible.org in the description.